Good evening and welcome to tonight's Monday, March 17th City Council meeting. It is St. Patrick's Day, and thank you all for choosing it in the most celebratory spot, City Hall here. I first will await a motion to leave the non-public session and to seal the minutes of the non-public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Kelly, will you please take the roll?
Mayor McEachran,
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Here.
Councilor Tabor,
Here.
Councilor Cook,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Blaylock,
Present.
Council Bagley,
Here.
Council Moreau,
Here.
Council Lombardi.
Here.
And as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I just want to note there's some people, extra people on the dais here. And I'm going to ask Sophie Cosgrove and Eli George to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, who will be mayor for the day. When I didn't tell them about that they were going to do that, but I think they know it. So after you. Great job. I'm just going to quickly introduce, and if, let's see, do we have, so we don't have everybody on here because there's a whole lot more folks in the audience because City Hall is certainly not run just by the folks up here, but we have Student Government Day, which is going to be the 26th, not the 7th, 26th of March, where the students will come in, and they will create an agenda, they'll have a meeting, but there's also people shadowing the city manager, the city attorney, DPW, Nathan in finance, everybody within City Hall, and they're going to come and do a much better job down here. That meeting is open to the public, and they are going to be creating an agenda. So if there's the opportunity to influence that agenda, I'm sure that you can reach out to these folks right behind us, and Heather Wheeler and Michelle Wheeler. If you would please stand. Just give a round of applause for and I want to thank Councilor Blaylock for bringing this back, but can all the students stand and just give us, let them know how much we appreciate them being involved in government? All right, well, we will do our best, and again, it is open to the public, so I'm not putting any more pressure on them, but if you guys have ideas that we haven't listened to, and if you're out there watching at home, let them know and look forward to the discussion. It's always a fun time, and I think that, being a citizen is still the most important job we have, and the fact that these kids are taking a time they could be doing something else tonight, and certainly during the day, next week to come and do this, which is not easy. It should be commended and an inspiration to all of us to get involved in ways big and small. So really excited about that. And next, this is super hard, and I was telling them behind us that it's just an order, and now the order is totally thrown off. And so, I don't know what we're doing next, but it's the acceptance of minutes for February 18th.
Your Honor, I move to accept and approve the minutes for February 18th, 2025 City Council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in
And a
favor?
comment?
Oh, yep, Councilor.
There's just a small error. Actually, John Tabor's name.
Forget that.
Yes,
I told Kelly this afternoon. I don't know who that guy is. He's taking my seat.
Other than that, second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next up, we have recognitions and volunteer committee reports. We have the Public Art Review Committee. And I think we have the chair of that committee, Chris Dwyer.
Good evening. And you have a short written report from our committee in your packet. I'm not going to go over that, but I want to make a few highlights, especially for members of the public and for students, and then encourage you to ask any questions. The ordinance actually requires us to do an annual report, and this is our first annual report. Our committee was full membership last not this February, but the past February. So this is like our first kind of full year of operation. And I think as a new committee, we've established a good foundation for moving forward. We've got a lot of the less fun things out of the way, clarifying the ordinance, building with the city staff, building the content for a website, getting the criteria in place. We've built a mailing list of over 100 international and national organizations and individuals who do public art. So we've kind of established our background for being able to advertise when we have opportunities. And then relatively new, and I would encourage you to take a look at it, we've created an inventory of the 73 or so public artworks that we actually have in the city, historical as well as contemporary. And each of those in the inventory, which is on the park website, has a photograph and an explanation. We're working with the Portsmouth Historical Society to have those digitized, and so they will become the basis for a walking tour this summer that the Historical Society will use, a selection of those. And we'll be working with something called the Public Art Archive to do collections of Portsmouth art. So this will be nationally available. As you know, because you approved it, we have undertook our first Percent for Art commission, which is on target. It's being fabricated now and will be installed in Pierce Island a little later this spring. The two others are underway. Actually, I should say one is underway, which is for the middle school, and then we will shortly be doing a commission for the garage, for the High Hanover Garage. We also review, and you know, many of you know about the Cod and the Mortal Sea, which I think has become quickly a little favorite spot for people. Many people comment on that. We approve private as well as public art if it's in the historic district or if it's subject to a land use board. And you will, some of those that you'll be seeing in the coming year or two. The Black Heritage Trail is on target to do the Ona Judge mural that has been a long time coming. There's work planned for the building at Deer and Maplewood. Those are private. And then Newbury Way, which I think is maybe on your agenda tonight, has some public art that we planned, that we have approved and looked at. So the things I want to call to your attention are two requirements in the ordinance. One is for us to identify future capital projects that we think could benefit by having an artist in the design or on the committee, which, I think we often don't think of when we do building committees, but I think would be important to think of. And we identified a couple areas. One is the refurbishment of playgrounds. We know that that's upcoming, and there are some wonderful opportunities with the playgrounds around the city to think of them more from an artistic design perspective, along with the functions that they have for playgrounds. A second, obviously, is the Sherburne housing development, which you've all been working on. A future new garage, which we know is in our future. And then the Mechanic Street pump station, which has been something we started talking about a long time ago when I was on the council. But given the prominence of that location, it's going to be really important that doesn't look like a pump station, but looks like something else. And then the second area that we've asked to identify are places where public art could advance economic development. And so you might think of, how do you advance economic development with public art? Well, you bring traffic to spaces, you bring interest to the spaces, you create an identification for a location. And so some obvious things that we think, and these are on your radar, but we should think about the public art there. The Market Square, redoing, the rail trail. There are fabulous rail trails around the country that have used art in really interesting ways. The Langdon Park, right across from City Hall, a really underutilized park in the city. The entrance to Commerce Way, and something that we will start raising money for to fill out the Bohenko Gateway Park. There are 3 pieces there now, and probably another 3 pieces, depending on what they are, could really create a nice entryway into the city. And we think that'll largely probably be with private funds that will be looking, private individuals and grant funds that will be looking for dollars. So those are a few highlights, but open to hearing any of your questions about anything else in the report or any ideas that you have that you want us to consider.
Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you very much for the report. I'm excited to hear the future projects, too, of the art. I think the art really enhances our town. But I was wondering if it was ever considered Margison Apartments. There's the, working with the PHA, there's kind of 2 almost, I mean, I think they're canvases, you know, and you kind of, they're big and prominent, and I always thought that would be a wonderful spot for art.
I think those are great ideas because you're right. They are canvases.
Yeah, there's 2 canvases, and I always, you know, I don't know, King Kong climbing up the South Church or something would be cool, but anything really would be cool.
We know who could do that.
Yes.
Assistant Mayor.
All right, thank you so much. I'm excited to hear about the conversation around the rail trail. I was just recently in Atlanta, and if anyone has been there recently, they know the Beltway, which is now their rail trail, and the art that they have displayed from murals. I think about going down the rail trail and passing under some of the bridges and some of the opportunities there. So really excited to hear that park is thinking about that.
You know, and closer to us in Newburyport, they've done a wonderful job with their rail trail. So if you want to see how art can enhance it. And that one was very organic with a number of local people identifying things that they wanted to see there. I think we want to maybe curate ours a little bit more, but it's a great place for businesses or others to come up with ideas, and you know, we would take them and help people work those ideas into something that would work. And you know, these things don't have to be expensive. Some of them are, depending on materials, but they don't necessarily have to be that expensive. The rail trail lends itself to natural uses, natural forms, landscape art, that type of thing.
Councilor Moreau.
I'd like to thank you very much for your report. It was very exciting to read through. And had you actually considered even City Hall? Our complex could have the ability, especially we already have some memorials. So I would think that maybe even thinking around the whole City Hall complex might be worth considering.
Especially as depending on what happens with the police station or how it evolves. I think it would be a great opportunity, especially because the vistas really lend to that. And it's important that we think of, you know, I just mentioned landscape art. I know that probably most of you, when you think of public art, think of murals or think of sculpture. But changing the landscape with art forms, lights, using light in a different way, they're using sound in a different way. There are a lot of different forms for that art can take on in the public sphere. Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you. I was coming around into the office and I saw the salt piles
Doesn't that look great?
there. And if I had been coming to pay taxes or register a car, I think it would have had a very calming effect on me. And so it surprised me just how amazingly well suited it looks there. So thank you for all the work that you did to get this here, and for the work you do on the committee and that of the committee at large.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, guys. All right, with that, we will open up to public comment. Show of hands, anybody else meant to sign up for public comment, didn't sign up? Okay, so one in the back. All right, so I'll put you in the end. First, we have Eric Anderson on land lease.
Is Mike on? Yes, it is. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the councilors. I am Eric Anderson. I live at 38 Georges Terrace in Portsmouth. While there are a number of topics to comment on this evening's agenda, one in particular stood out. Under Presentations and the communications, item 8B is a request from Mr. Chris Adams from 66 Coakley Road to expand his property by more than double onto city-owned land, which is currently constructed as a right-of-way easement for power lines belonging to Eversource. I've handed you a Google map. I'm sorry it's not as clear as it might be, but at least I think you can distinguish my discussion here. Here are some details that I think are of further interest. In the area he requests, he has already constructed a vinyl fence. There is no detail regarding, if any, revocable lease, which would look like any conditions related to the cost of it. I mean, this sets a precedent for other property owners to request similar arrangements here on Coakley Road and throughout the city where similar conditions exist. The proposed motion by the Deputy City Attorney states to allow Mr. Adams to install this fence in the area requested. Again, he has already done so without permission from the city and now seeks approval. I'm not an legal expert, but I think state statute 41:14A has some influence here, but I'll let that be decided from, somebody with more legal authority. I do not know if this might be a normal condition of action in a situation of this time coming from the Deputy City Attorney, or whether this should have gone through another process, but it should be the knowledge of this council and the public that Mr. Adams is the husband of Assistant Mayor Kelly. And it might be possible that her guidance and influence has been factored into this request. I hope this council will reject this request for consideration for some very obvious reasons and even instruct Mr. Adams to remove the fence that he has already installed without authority from the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Next up, Esther Kennedy on Portsmouth.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. Happy St. Patty's Day and welcome students. Eric could not have said it better. We were looking at everything and, in this time of land, where land is being precious, when you look at Google Earth, it looks like a great piece of property back there. I don't know if there's access, but it might be a nice place for building. And making sure people can have a building by the city. So, I just ask you to think about it, and I hope the assistant mayor will recuse herself. I'm sure she will, but this isn't a good place to be, folks. And I think you really need to think about how people are going to perceive this. On another note, I want to think about the art down in Bohanko Park, and I hope that people take into consideration. I really have always felt that that should have not been called Bohanko Park, but more Italian, something related to our Italian community that had to leave their homes because of what happened in urban renewal down there. It's upsetting to me that we really don't have anything honoring. We have things, a park, and a monument that kind of honors developers, but we don't have anything honoring of stature our Italian community down there who gave up their houses. So I would encourage you to think about that. Lastly, I was here and I was told before you all about property rights by Councilor Bagley, and that he feels everyone has a right to their property, and I would agree to some extent. However, we chose to live in this community. Councilor Bagley was just recently on Facebook because someone posted a new development and there were many, many people against it. People are tired of development, and he tried to explain the situation. I think you have to be proactive. I think you have to be open and honest. I think we do have property rights. But I also think as a citizen, we have a bigger dedication to a community at large. We're here for Portsmouth, and we need to think about Portsmouth. So as we think about our historical values moving forward for 2026, I hope you remember that our historic community is very important to why people come and visit our Portsmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Next up, Dave Cosgrove on school funding.
Good evening, everyone, especially the future leaders behind you. I'd like to just talk a little bit about an analysis that I conducted looking at year-over-year school budget growth. Granted, the version of the budget that I looked at most recently was dated late January. Some interesting nuggets that I found that I'd like to call out. The first being that 65% of the budget growth for 2026 relative to 2025 had absolutely nothing to do with teachers' salaries or associated benefits. In fact, almost 50% of that year-over-year growth is associated with special education, and in particular, the vast majority of that money came from out-of-district school placements. This is beyond my area of expertise, but I think it would behoove us to gain a deeper understanding of how we might be able to remedy that. I don't know if we need to hire additional expertise into our school system such that we're not having to place students out of district. Which leads me to my next quick point. It's hard for me to not feel like the retirement offers that went out to some of these students, it's hard for me to feel like they weren't a bit premature and really unrelated to the primary areas of budget growth that I've just called out. And then granted, I was unable to attend the last school board meeting, but the one prior, I was a bit troubled by the fact that it seemed like we were making strategic staffing decisions purely based on where teachers decided to retire from, be it the architecture department, the French department. I would hope that we would look at our strategic objectives for education longer term and not solely be sort of forced into decision making based solely on who decided to retire and who didn't. And then lastly, I'll say that with the overall shift of tax burden to larger percentage of that pie, so to speak, shifted to residential relative to commercial, I think that's only increased our expectations in our education system. I feel very fortunate. My daughter is sitting behind you, headed off to a great school in the fall, and she's benefited from all that, this council has done in previous councils. I have a daughter who's going to be a freshman at PHS this fall, and I just hope that she has the same opportunities, if not more, than what my graduating senior was able to enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Next up, Jim Lee on the budget.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council all. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. So I have an article, I'll read a couple of sentences from the Seacoast Online, March 4th edition. So as the City Council considers how much it will ask taxpayers to spend in the coming fiscal year, the number of city employees who made $100,000 or more in gross wages during 2024 hit another record high, according to wages list released by the city. A total of 261 employees working for the city in calendar year 2024 broke the $100,000 mark, with 132 on the city side and 129 on the school side. So I thought it might be helpful to take a look at some New Hampshire towns for comparison. So Dover has a population of 39,485. They have 124 employees that make over 100,000. Durham is 15,490. They have 34 employees. Manchester, which is 5 times the population of Portsmouth, has 165 employees that make over $100,000. Concord is 44,169. They have 115 people that make over $100,000. Hampton has 16,000. They have 42 employees over 100,000. And Rochester has 33,500 with 84 employees making over 100,000. So kind of breaking that down to something that you can is a little more easy to understand. Portsmouth has 11.48 city employees owning over $100,000 per 1,000 residents, while the average across these other New Hampshire cities is 3.39 per 1,000 residents. That means Portsmouth ratio is 238% higher than the average. You cannot keep levying a higher and higher tax burden on the cities of Portsmouth through taxes and salaries. I urge you, when you consider your budget, to sharpen up the pencils, and I feel sure there's some places in a lot of areas that could be adjusted. So thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you, Jim. And I saw one other hand raised for public comment. And seeing none on Zoom.
Hi, my name's Dave Marvez. I live at 7 Brackett Lane. I'm here to talk about the lower lot. Just this past week, somebody came up to me and said, hey, they chose the lower lot for workforce housing. And just so I'm clear, I'm not against workforce housing. I think PHA does a fine job. Their buildings are nice. But then having to live right across the street from an empty lot, I realized the benefits to my family, to my neighbors next door. As summer comes along and the motorcycles come out, they roar down South Street. And the sound, luckily, on the City Hall side, gets to roll in through the parking lot. The rest of it comes into my house. And what does this have to do with workforce housing? Well, if you put a building in that lot, you're building a canyon. And that canyon is going to keep the sound in. And our quality of life on South Street decreases even more. If you've been out there, if you sat on that bench on the corner like I do every day, me and my dog, we watch the cars go by. Some stop for the stop signs, some don't. Matter of fact, a lot don't. Okay, so this just adds. I've seen people almost get hit just down by the fish market. A woman was walking her 3 children across the street in the crosswalk. Beautiful day. Car was coming right at her. All right. That's the kind of traffic I'm talking about. It's just not motorcycles, it's trucks. So I've been watching the Housing Committee meetings online, and I'm curious when Mayor Kelly, or Assistant Mayor Kelly, asked city staff, what's the height restriction on a building on the lower lot? And they came back and said, well, it's municipal property, there is no restriction. And somebody on the committee came out and said, build it up. Mayor Kelly also responded with that comment, and then there was giggling throughout the whole committee meeting. I don't find it funny. Okay? We worked hard to move to Portsmouth, to pay off our house. That's where I'm going to die. All right? I was told when you had a discovery meeting in the parking lot several months ago by one of your committee members, oh, you guys don't matter. It was a bunch of old folks. Some of these are in this room. And for some reason, we didn't matter. Assistant Mayor Kelly wasn't there. But I find that very distasteful. And I could name the person, but I'm not going to do it right here. So all I'm asking is, before you think about that, I'm done. I'll be at your meeting next time.
Please come.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? Public comment? Going once, going twice, none on Zoom. All right. Next up, we are on to public hearings and vote on ordinances. Third and final reading of ordinance amendment to Chapter 10, zoning ordinance by striking Article 5, measurement rules, Section 10.515.14 by amending Section 10.515.13 and by adding Sections 10.811.6 and 10.811.61 relating to accessory uses to permitted residential uses of the ordinance of the City of Portsmouth.
Your Honor, I would move to pass third and final reading of the ordinance as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Moreau.
I'd just like to make note of the discussion that happened around the planning board when they considered this, and there was a lot of concern, which is a lot of it is expressed in the memo that was part of our package. They fully agree that removing the mechanicals made sense, especially with all of the amount of time that it goes before the ZBA and it's actually granted to allow them. They had a concern with fences because even if you have a 7-foot tall fence, you would actually have to apply for a building permit. So they're going to have to apply for a building permit at 7 feet or above anyway, so it wouldn't be unpermitted. And I forget, but Peter Stith, I'm sure, could correct me if I'm wrong. But there was a need for a permit anyways if you're that, so we can't sort of exempt it from that part. They had also concerns with the sheds being on property lines or being allowed in front lots, because if you allow them in the front of the house, it might change the character of a neighborhood. If you have a lot of people and they're all putting them right on their property lines, it could really create sort of a big blog, and if they keep gas in them, if somebody had, there just could be a lot of dangers with putting, if they ended up with a lot of them put really close together. So they really felt like adhering to some setbacks would be appropriate.
I'd like to pass the gavel to the Assistant Mayor. Mostly I forget to do it, but we got the students behind me, so I told them that I would remind them the proper thing to do. All the time I just start talking, but would love to be able to, if called on, speak to this third reading.
Your Honor?
So I appreciated the feedback from the planning board, and this was something that I sought. I have a couple of quick comments. First, excited that the HVAC seems like we're all in agreement there. With exception on the fence and the playhouses, I do have a couple of comments, and I just want to kind of put them in, I guess, the overall kind of idea that we can be one of two things. We can be a high trust community, or we can be a high regulation community. And what I mean by that is that we can agree that we are going to trust one another to do the right thing, or we can regulate it so we don't have the opportunity to not do the right thing. When I read the feedback in terms of the permitted action around the fence, I'm like, great, okay, it looks like we've solved an issue. Because that was the original thing that brought me to want to seek this out, was that when somebody was trying to get a fence permit, doing the right thing, they were told to, I think, by the fence company, but doing the right thing to get an 8-foot fence where they had previously had a 6-foot fence, and they agreed with their neighbor. They went and got the fence permit, and then it took them, 3 weeks to get on the schedule, and then it got pushed to the next meeting. And it's the whole idea that when we have a permitting process to then look as inefficient as we are, nobody knows, when they're going through the first time, that it's going to be actually the ZBA that has to see this and actually put it on the agenda. And so I thought the fact that we could make sure that the fence was good and safe was enough. I was a little bit thinking, like, I didn't see any evidence within that document in terms of the air and light restrictions that would occur at 8 feet that would not occur at 7 feet. If there had been, I might be more swayed by that, but I feel as though the idea that you must ask and get everybody to agree upon, putting an 8-foot fence when you might want privacy from your neighbors seems like the opposite thing that we should be doing. Second point on the playhouses and the tree and the structures, a shed could, or a playhouse could become a shed. I know my playhouse has become a shed because there's a lot of stuff in it. And so the idea that we don't actually regulate what's on people's front yards. You can have, and my wife gets really upset about this, I have a snowblower out there, I have some wood that I'm going to put in my backyard, there is a tarp. I'm going to clean all of this up, Lori, I promise. But there's no regulations around that. And so I think that to have an artificial regulation where, when the feedback was that we could either, this might be an enforcement issue around this, well, great, we should solve for that, not, solve for that by making it onerous and making sure that we go through that. So I respect the planning board. I hope that we're able to pass third reading here. I want them, certainly to put forth our planning, our master plan. But for this, I feel as though Portsmouth has to be higher trust and lower regulation when it comes to our neighbors and to trust each other to do the right thing. Otherwise, we're going to get a code book. I talked to Bob Sullivan, code book in Portsmouth when I was born was this big. Now it's this big, and there's a lot of good codes in that. But if we don't actively prune it, it's going to make all of the regulations that we have seem far less important when they seem far more capricious. And so I hope that we can pass third and final reading, and if there's a problem, we can always go back and add this through the process, and we'll have the benefit of the knowledge that we were wrong.
Any more comments? Councilor Bagley?
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with the mayor. One other point to this is, a lot of times when residents come to speak to me about help with the city, it's before they have to go before the ZBA or the planning board or the HDC. And, that can be pretty intimidating for a lot of people to get up there at the podium and then talk to the people at the dais if they don't like public speaking. It adds a lot of delay. I think this is a relatively light lift without a lot of downside, and I'll be supporting it.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm also going to support these changes, and the reason I'm doing this is that a lot of the feedback that came from the planning board, while it was incredibly helpful to review, isn't really relevant even in my neighborhood, which I find very interesting, like the idea of 5-foot setbacks and 10-foot setbacks. I live in a neighborhood that's a really tight neighborhood, and people have buildings right next to the property line, and people have sheds right next to the property line, and we already have to go through the Historic District Commission to get those permissions, which we don't remove in these changes to the ordinance. But frequently, people not only have to go through the Historic District Commission, but then they have to go to the zoning board to put a shed up on their property when they only have 10 feet of space to put a shed in. They don't have that much space already, and then they're having to pay attention to a setback or get a permission, a variance to get closer to a fence when a next door neighbor has a shed that's grandfathered, that's been there for 50 years and it was right on the property line, or a fence that's grandfathered. And so it makes the regulation very onerous on certain individuals. And what I found is that in limited space, people are often more respectful in some ways of their neighbors, knowing that everybody is in the same situation. And I think that it's important that we trust our neighbors to make good decisions with regard to our own needs and their needs, and that we have those conversations as neighbors. So I think it's reasonable to move forward with these changes, and know that, we all live in the same community. We have to live together, and so we need to be cooperative. And I trust that Portsmouth residents can do that.
Thank you, Councilor Cook. Any more discussion? Okay, and we have the motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Your Honor, I will pass that back to you.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. Next up, third and final reading of ordinance amending to Chapter 10 Zoning Ordinance, Zoning Map, Article 4, Zoning District and Use Regulations, Section 10.421, District Location and Boundaries, Section 10.421.10, be amended to remove 185 Orchard Street, Tax Map 152, Lot 2-1 from the Historic District overlay.
Your Honor, I move to pass third and final of the ordinance as presented.
Second.
And I'll just touch to this. This was recommended by the Historic District Commission and the Planning Board, but this again is just cleaning up our historic district, keeping it genuine to the actual history of Portsmouth, as Orchard Street was not a historic street, and this will allow the homeowners to move forward building their new home. So, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On to the city manager's items which require action.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor. First up is a request for an easement and license for public deck access located at 99 Bow Street. This is to honor part of what was granted as part of the site plan approval process at the Planning Board back in March of 2024 to Martingale LLC, permitting the expansion of the existing deck to include expanded seating for the business as well as public access to the Piscataqua River. The Planning Board conditioned approval on Martingale conveying an easement to the city for public access through the building to the public deck, and that public access run with the land. So attached in your packet is a copy of the quitclaim deed of easement and license. This one is unique in that the deck is over the river, and therefore the underlying fee interest is held by the state of New Hampshire. So Martingale sought the permit from the state to construct the deck, and therefore can only convey to the city a license for public access. So that would be the nuance here. So if modifications are ever made to this building, Martingale has the obligation to continue to provide public access sufficient to comply with ADA requirements, subject to reasonable modifications if agreed to by the city. And our legal and planning departments have reviewed and approved of the attached license and easement deed.
Your Honor, I make a motion to be moved to authorize the city manager to accept and approve a quitclaim deed of easement and license for public access in substantially similar form to the deed from Martingale LLC contained in the agenda packet.
Second?
Any discussion? Councilor Morrow?
I do remember when we approved this, even though it was some time ago, and we had a long discussion around how do you have ADA accessible, and it is only through the building. So we understood that there might be time limits on when that is accessible, but they do indeed, it's the only way to do it. Otherwise, there's a giant long set of stairs that go down to that deck, which would be open all the time. But ADA will only be open when the building is actually open.
Councilor Cook?
I just had one question on this. Is there any signage that makes sure that the public is aware that there is ADA access through the building?
There is now that speaks to the elevator, but
It was a part of their approval, was actually requirement. We've actually made that part of all public access aspects now, is that there is a sign noting that this has public access.
and accessible for all folks.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Sounds, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right.
Item number 2, Your Honor, is a request for a public hearing regarding the Fernald easement financing at the next council meeting on April 4th. You will recall that back on July 10th of 2023, this council authorized a supplemental appropriation from the city's water fund's unrestricted net position, along with a grant from the New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund and a grant from New Hampshire DES Local Source Water Protection Program to purchase a conservation easement on the Fernald property, all in the name of protecting the Bellamy Reservoir water quality. The easement is comprised of a 44.6 acre parcel abutting the Bellamy Reservoir. It's a great item to retain and add to the portfolio of land we protect. And in 2024, a grant for $714,000 was awarded for this project from congressionally directed spending. That grant, along with the 2 grants already received and approved, would cover the entire cost of the acquisition. What we are concerned with is the timing of the disbursement of the grant funds and, quite frankly, the uncertainty of congressionally directed spending. So in the event that is delayed or does not come through, the city staff recommends obtaining bonding authorization to cover the entire amount, for which we could reimburse the city's water net position should the funding come through. So this is to put you on notice. We would like to formally hold a public hearing on April 7th to request that bonding authorization.
Your Honor, I move to schedule a public hearing during the April 7th, 2025 City Council meeting to consider bonding up to $1,478,000 to allow for the purchase of the Fernald easement prior to or in lieu of the disbursement of grant funds.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Tabor?
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. I'd just like to request that for that hearing, if we could receive in the packet a restatement of the CIP and the debt limit calculation. In the case where the federal funding disappeared, what would this do to our bonded?
Right, this would come from the water fund, so different,
right.
different restrictions.
Right, so it's an enterprise fund. Okay, never mind.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. The question is for the city manager. Have we received any indication that we might not be receiving these funds yet?
We have not received any definitive information. We just don't want to lose sight of the fact of a timely closing with the property owner.
Thank you.
Councilor Blaylock and Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Owner. I'll just stress the importance of any opportunity to save land, conserve land around the Bellamy Reservoir. Those opportunities don't come up every day, but I appreciate the city jumping on it and making sure this gets done.
Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. In light of the budget cuts that seem to be happening at the federal and state level, a lot of people have asked me, how does this affect the city? And I said it hasn't really yet, but I guess I can't say that anymore. This is probably something we're going to see more of in different departments and in different things that were grant funded, and we'll have to make the decisions. I would support this because, obviously water is one of the most important things that we have in the city, but I think this might not be the last time we have to make a decision like this.
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. I will, for all of the students here with the pointing out the Bellamy Reservoir is where Portsmouth gets its water. It was pointed out to me on every drive to Stratford when I saw my Nana. My dad would point out, and through the Army Corps of Engineers, it came down to Portsmouth, and we're the lucky beneficiaries of a lot of water that we do all we can to protect, and this would certainly be in that. For folks at home, again, Councilor Tabor, with regard, is from the enterprise fund, so it doesn't impact our debt limit when it comes to our CIP, and certainly appreciate the proactive nature on this. Encourage everybody to speak out at the public hearing, which we will set for, if this passes, April 7th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Item number 3 is a third extension of a temporary construction license for 8 KPH LLC for the property located at 70 Maplewood Avenue, and the owner-developer is here tonight to answer any questions. You will recall there were several, there was a license request granted, an extension, a second extension, and this third extension for 60 days, which would run from April 2nd through May 31st, is for reasons outlined in Mr. Ballin's very thorough letter, but to summarize, the extension is needed in order to complete the subsurface work on the sidewalks once the asphalt plants reopen at the beginning of April. In addition, the freezing temperatures have delayed washing and caulking of the brick, and you will recall he had to wait for new brick to be brought in because the first brick was not correct, and then to complete the balcony railings and trim as the last item. And the license area did not change. It's the same as the original request and is depicted in the exhibit in your packet.
Your Honor, I move to authorize the city manager to execute and accept the third license extension to encumber the sidewalks along Maplewood Avenue and Deer Street that abut 70 Maplewood Ave as requested.
Second.
I really hope voting for this doesn't make the weather turn bad again. It's getting a little warmer. Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. Do we anticipate that this is the last needed extension?
Tom, would you like to speak at the microphone if any more extensions would be required?
We get the look of the Irish now, right?
Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, I would love for the answer to that to be 100% yes. I'm going to go with 95%, unless all of you have friends at Eversource that can get me a transformer faster.
Okay,
that'll be the next hurdle.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, you're still on.
I'm still going.
Yeah.
Item number 4 is a request for a street naming to change the name of Haven Court downtown to Newberry Way, which reflects the and acknowledges the presence of the former J.J. Newberry department store, which existed in the building along this corridor. And as a reminder to both the council and folks listening, while this is a private street, the city maintains easements for public access, installation of underground utilities, and maintenance of the High Hanover Garage over the entirety of Haven Court from Fleet Street to High Street. And the Department of Public Works has reviewed this request with State UN 911, Police Dispatch, and Fire Department. They have no objection to the name, and there are no duplicate names in this zip code.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion we move to authorize the use of Newberry Way as the private street name between High Street and Fleet Street, formerly named Haven Court.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Item number 5, it's exciting to think that it's almost the farmers market season here again. And our market manager, Seacoast Eat Local, is looking to set up the 29th season of the farmers market. We're very proud to host that here at the upper lot of City Hall. The We run a yearly agreement, and this year's agreement is in substantially similar form to that from last year. In the sense of any changes, we've got a few different vendors this year, and we are looking to increase the number of accessible parking spaces up top, and we will relocate the city's tent that is part of the farmers market to the steps of Connor's Cottage.
Your Honor, I move to authorize the city manager to execute the license agreement as presented, allowing SLE to operate a farmer's market at the municipal complex on Saturday mornings from May 3rd, 2025 through October 25th, 2025, and that the city manager is further authorized to negotiate and execute any amendment to the agreement that she deems consistent with its purpose.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. My last item tonight is a request for an amendment to a lease with the Players Ring. We are fortunate to enjoy the Players Ring as a tenant in the building right along Marcy Street. And the packet will outline the history of how they came to be our tenant. And cut to the chase, we're looking to update the lease and renew a lease. And we're looking for a second extension because both sides are looking for additional time to agree upon and finalize the next 10 years of capital improvements to the facility, which is typical of tenants in city facilities. What they do is they plan for and they execute and they pay for capital improvements that would be roughly the value of what the property taxes would be. So given that there is timing of work to be done as part of our Prescott Park Master Plan improvements and resiliency to the Water Street area, those will be factored in as well. So we look forward to bringing to you before June 30th a lease renewal in its entirety with Players Ring.
Your Honor, I move to authorize the city manager to negotiate and enter into a lease agreement, lease amendment 3, with the Players Ring in a form similar to the attached.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. We are on to the consent agenda. We had a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Your Honor, move to adopt the consent agenda?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. See, the Halloween parade turns 30 this year. Next up, presentations and written communications, email correspondence.
I move to accept and place on file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, request from Chris Adams for a license agreement at 66 Coakley Road for the purposes of installing, maintaining, and replacing a fence for the ordinary yard maintenance.
Your Honor, I would move to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a revocable license to Chris Adams of city-owned property adjacent to 66 Coakley Road for the purposes of installing, maintaining, and replacing a fence and for ordinary yard maintenance.
Second.
Any discussion?
Your Honor, it was noted earlier that this property is owned by my husband. It was purchased before we even met. The fence, through confusion, was installed before we even met. As I would for any other resident, I advised him to reach out to the city to rectify any issues, and so that is what this is, and I will be abstaining from this vote.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. Any other discussion? Councilor Moreau.
I'm just curious if anyone is aware whether or not the property was purchased with the fence in place already.
I don't know.
What would that color be in terms of figuring this out? Could we send this to the city manager? Would that include the legal department in terms of a report back if there's anything that needs to happen? I'm looking at Councilor Moreau because she's on the planning board.
I think the deputy city attorney might have an update.
Right here.
I'm
Deputy
like,
City
you have
Attorney.
several legal counsels that could help you.
Oh,
besides me.
planning board, do it. Just listened to him earlier, but Attorney McCourt.
Thank you. So the question was whether the fence pre-existed his acquisition of the property?
Correct.
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. Mr. Adams is here. If you'd like to ask him yourself, we could certainly get the answer to that question.
There was a separate. Yeah.
Hello, yes, there was a separate fence that was on city property. This one was replaced. I had spoken with Eversource, which I know is not the proper way to do that, and they told me as long as it didn't get in their way. So that was the operandi behind that. Again, I'm trying to do the right thing, not get anything above anyone, and truthfully, I'll do whatever you say.
So there is actually a giant utility easement that goes along
For
this
all of
section
it,
of property.
yes.
So it's not a buildable piece of property.
It is not, and they have the right to tear it down anytime they need to get in there, because they have chopped trees down. You know, all of Coakley Road is on Eversource's easement that they use. And you can hear the power lines in my backyard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Seems like that sums it up. Councilor Bagley?
Just a clarification so I fully understand it. Revocable license means that if at any point in the future the city decided it wanted to change its mind, it can.
That's correct.
And Eversource agreed. Okay.
Eversource can take it down.
You can.
Getting shushed now by Mark.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to make sure that if this does move forward, that the city manager then would treat other properties along that same line of properties in the same manner for consideration for the easement space.
Yeah, I think I saw in the picture that was submitted, there were other properties with fences on the, on that, also in that same,
We did before.
what's that?
I think we actually have done this before
That's
for
right, we-
someone farther
yeah,
down.
we did, yeah, with like,
Mhm.
okay.
To
You're
that,
abstaining.
no. Oh, I can't,
yeah,
I have
yeah,
to
can't
abstain in
talk in the
discussion.
extension. All right, so there'll be a negotiation and possibly a report back in terms of anything that would be found if there was to be other folks that need to want to take this into consideration. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Abstain?
Yeah, abstain, oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so I was told that you guys also have still school tomorrow, and so we are at just before 8 o'clock, so just want to thank you all for coming. Hopefully, I was excited. Hopefully Sophie wasn't embarrassed by her dad. I thought those were great comments. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes while we clear out. Back. Thanks again to the students who came out. We're on to the council updates. Under my name, appointments to be considered, again, not voted this year, or hopefully this year, this week, but next week. Appointment of Mandela Pruitt to the Arts and Cultural Commission, and the reappointment of Kara Ann Rodenheiser to the Portsmouth Housing Authority. Again, those applications are in your packet. Please reach out with any questions either to me or to the applicant themselves. We are, unfortunately, with the resignation of Eva Boyce of the Cemetery Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to accept the resignation of Eva Boyce from the Cemetery Committee with regret and request a letter be sent thanking Eva for her service to the city.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Eva. And next we have boards, commissions, and committees 2024 attendance record.
Your Honor, I move to accept the 2024 boards, commissions, and committees attendance records.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And if I could suspend the rules, I'd like to add one thing under my name, as it was not in time for the
So moved.
Second.
it would be to request a letter of support.
We have to vote on the.
All in favor?
Aye.
It would be to request a letter of support to our naval shipyard workers at this time, certainly of uncertainty. There's been a number, and those have ramped up in recent days with concern around the future. It's surprising that with the investment the country has made in our safety and the investment as a direct result of that into the shipyard, that now we're talking about furloughing, stopping hiring freezes, canceling. That's not a ship that can, start back up very easily. And that is a big impact, not only national security, but here the local economy. And we want to be steadfast in our support of those shipyard workers, and thankful for the work that they do. So would like to draft a letter in support. I know it's somewhat unorthodox, but would appreciate the support on this.
Move to draft the letter.
Second.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On to Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to request a report back on any potential health issues posed by the bird flu or avian influenza in relation to geese or geese droppings located on Pierce Island or in Prescott Park. If I get a second, I'll speak.
Second.
I've had several requests come forward from concerned residents who spend a lot of time walking on Pierce Island. Apparently we have quite a bit. As we know, we have geese that are resident on Pierce Island and in Prescott Park, and there are a lot of droppings, and there's a concern now with bird flu showing up in Ogunquit in that area that maybe we will be impacted as well, and that children will be playing in these areas or will be exposed. So I just wanted to make sure that we get a report back on any concerns or questions we have around that from the city manager.
If I may, I do have a report from the city's health director, Kim McNamara. So she was happy to provide this information to you all and to the interested public. Avian influenza, also known as H5N1 bird flu or highly pathogenic avian influenza, which means it is highly pathogenic to birds. Currently, it is not considered a high risk for human infection. It is prevalent in wild and domestic fowl and can be spread through droppings. Human-to-human transmission has not been demonstrated. She is watching the situation carefully, as well as health officials worldwide. Her advice to everyone is to avoid contact with wild waterfowl and their feces, and if contact does occur, the best thing to do is wash immediately shoes, clothes, hands, or shower, and pets should be bathed. And she and her staff are working with the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture to find humane deterrent methods moving forward.
Thank you.
That was fast. Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will say we're very lucky to have Health Officer Kim McNamara. I've worked closely with her at my family's restaurant, but I have full faith that she's keeping us safe, and I appreciate the report.
Thank you.
So,
Councilor Cook.
Your Honor, I don't believe we need to vote on this because we have our report.
All right. We can rescind that. Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to accept and approve the action sheet and minutes of the March 6, 2025 Parking Traffic Safety Committee meeting.
Second.
And I'll just speak briefly to it. There was not a lot on the agenda. We approved a driveway where statutorily there probably wouldn't be a driveway, but it kind of made sense in this case. And there was one of the tour guides in town who lives, I think, in Kittery, had requested that we remove parking in front of Tomb on Bow Street. That area services a lot of businesses and theaters and restaurants, and the parking supply there is pretty limited. So we did a site visit, but we didn't think the loss of the inventory was worthwhile for the 5 minutes a couple times a week during the summer that somebody would be visiting there. So in a historic city like Portsmouth, sometimes we have to make those judgment calls, and this one we didn't think rose to the level of eliminating the parking there.
Noted. Sister Mayor.
Thank you. Just wondering if, and I apologize for not being able to watch the meeting, was it maybe brought up that maybe on the celebration of the former Governor Bennington Wentworth, on maybe his birthday or the anniversary of his death, to maybe have that one day blocked off as people may be touring for that day? Is that something that the committee had considered or would potentially consider?
It was not, and partly because the tours may not coincide with those types of events. However, we did inform the applicant that there is the ability, there is a fee associated with it, but you can red bag that meter, which would prevent parking there for that day. So if
Okay.
there was a very specific date that they didn't want to have parking there, there's a mechanism to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for letting the applicant know.
Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. And yeah, I will say that I'm a little disappointed by the decision of the Parking, Traffic, and Safety on that one space. I think, it's such a historic grave, and to put a parking spot where, like, literally the opening, the passenger or your driver door hits their name on the grave. I was just hoping there'd be a little bit more consideration given to that. But again, we're a very unique town that we have the grave of a Lord Governor. I don't know, that's unique history, and I don't know if a $5,000 from a parking spot is worth more than that, but.
I would point out that the committee was clear that this was not a revenue issue. This was a parking stress in that area issue for the stores and restaurants and theater.
Noted. Well, maybe there's something, not to legislate this on the fly, and Eli and Sophie, please don't take this something you should do. But if there was a request through, possibly with the church has a lot of non-public metered parking. Would there be any way to investigate whether or not do you have this answer? Did this happen in the
So
meeting?
just in front of this parking spot, there's an X which goes to a door which may or may not actually need access on a regular basis. So there's a plan to inquire to see if there's any ability to move a parking spot. But we don't have those answers yet, so it's.
Okay, well, I'm saying, like, I was actually speaking, like, from into the parking garage of the church. Is there a way to trade for a city spot into to a church spot out there? To say we would not be giving up one, but we would request of the church if this is something we could do. And I would also think that.
We've got a good plan in place, we just don't have the data yet. That
Okay.
would get us a spot like right there.
All right. So TBD on this. Door's not closed yet on this entirely, but at the moment, we're not willing, based on the stress in the inventory of that location, to talk about.
Yes, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, if we approve the parking, traffic, and safety minutes, and we decide we want to claw back this parking space, it would then take I think a 6-person vote to overturn the approval. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
Yep, so these are action minutes, so they go into effect at the end of the year until the omnibus bill gets passed. And we do that because the safety measures that would need to go enforced now. I think that any situation, I don't think that we would be voting to do this if it wasn't a clear cut, everybody's in favor of it. I think that whatever plan that we would be, coming back with should get the entire support of the council because it's a great idea. and not necessarily a 5-4 vote on something that, would be, maybe have limited impact. Councilor Morrow?
You mentioned the X spot is right in front of there.
Yes.
Couldn't you put some sort of marker in that spot that then at least alludes to, it could be like even a plaque or something that just speaks to that without having to change the parking?
So there's other graves there, but those markers are.
Because
they
I'm
don't have the
pretty
names
sure
on them
that
anymore.
door is the old Underground Railroad when it used to come off of Bow Street. It was a tour I was on once. It goes in, that's what that door actually leads to.
I think until we have the discussion with the church, it's hard to.
All right, we'll save for that. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Next up, we have acceptance of donation to support the acquisition and installation of a memorial for Dina Chase Whipple at the North Cemetery from Apador Marine Engineering.
Your Honor,
Chase Whipple, sorry.
Your Honor, I move to accept the donation as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Your Honor, I would, Your Honor, may I?
Yep.
Yes. This is very exciting. Thank you so much to Apador Marine Engineering and also the Dames who have helped fund this memorial and headstone that will be placed in North Cemetery. There will be a celebration ceremony on June 13th with descendants of Dinah Chase Whipple. It is very important in our historic town, and I want to point out Sue Sterry, who is the head of the cemetery committee, who has been instrumental in making sure that we are able to recognize Dinah Chase Whipple and all of the wonderful things that she did for the community. So June 13th at 1 p.m., we will be having the dedication ceremony for this installation at North Cemetery.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to the Cemetery Committee, and most thank you to Apador Marine Engineering. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? City Manager, informational item.
I have one item, Your Honor. It's a verbal update from our Peace Development Authority Board meeting, which took place on March 11th. You'll all be happy to know that even though it was raining out, the driving range at Pease Golf Course opened today.
Oh,
And
wow.
some of the golf course will be open within the next week. Of note, golf fees did increase. The last rate increase was 4 years ago. We are still very competitive with similar golf courses, and those rates will take effect May 1st. And this golf course apparently has the largest all-electric golf cart fleet in New England. The Herald stole my thunder by printing the story about 317 million pounds of salt shipped in the months of January, February, and March of this year. That included 6,100 trucks moving the salt away from the Port Authority. And for the airport, they see 100 operations daily between civil, commercial, and Air National Guard. So that's significant, and it makes this airport the 6th busiest Air Force tower in the world. That is my update from Pease.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilor Lombardi?
I would add that with all that busyness at Pease, there were, I think, only one noise complaint.
Councilor Lombardi, I get a few more than that. At the actual.
The airport.
Oh, yeah, because they send them all to us here in the city. But they've done a great job.
Call
recently.
Paul then.
Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just looked at, everyone's probably seen along the I-95 that the sound barrier has started construction, is underway. Also, two things from the high school. I just wanted to congratulate the Portsmouth High School on a very fun season. They unfortunately lost in the semifinals, and I want to congratulate the PHS girls hockey team. They made it to the championship, unfortunately lost in the championship. But, congratulations on a successful season, and keep up the hard work.
Here. Go Clip. All right, would wait a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, Portsmouth.